What would a Broncos playoff appearance mean, not only for the team, but Andrew Mason as we celebrate here on a Friday for Courtland Sutton and Garrett Bolles, man?
Doesn't that picture just give you the warm fuzzies, by the way? They're wearing the throwback uniforms. They're celebrating. They're the two longest tenured Broncos going back to the 2018 season. The only Broncos who were around when Vance Joseph was a head coach and not a defensive coordinator as he is now. They've been through it all. I wouldn't say they've seen everything. It's always dangerous to say you've seen it all, that you've seen everything. But they've seen a lot of failure. They've seen a lot of frustration. And here we are for the third straight game, and these two are at the brink of clinching their first playoff appearance.
I think it's great. I think it's fantastic because it could have gone the other way. I mean, with everything that both of those men have been through, and we can start with Sutton or Bolles, either one, Mace. Mm-hmm. I mean, you talk about giving up, trying times, wanting to go elsewhere because they don't understand me or whatever. Like, they stayed with it, and they are now two, even Bolles, yes, fan favorites for this Broncos team.
Stayed with it, and with Bolles, it was going through that period where it looked like the Broncos didn't want him back.
Right.
They didn't give him the fifth-year option that you can give to first-round picks. He goes into the 2020 season. He's basically playing for his time as a Bronco. He's playing for his career, and he responds with the best season of his career to that point. But yeah, for Garett Bolles, it wasn't just about wanting to stay with the Broncos, and he's always made it clear how much he loves being a part of this team and this organization, especially when they have good offensive line coaches like they have now with Zach Strief, like they had in 2019 through 2021 with Mike Munchak. It's also, he had to make the Broncos want him because by declining that fifth-year option, John Elway, the general manager at the time, was saying, we don't want you, or at the very least, if we want you, you got to prove to us that we need you around here.
Right. And I think that prove it type of thing is for both of them. You know what I mean? With Sutton, with like, hey, can I have a raise? No. Here's some incentives that he could get all of them, but I hope he does, man. I'm pulling for Court to get all of his incentives. He's got most of them. There's one remaining, I believe. But that's a check Greg Penner would be happy to write for a guy like Courtland Sutton, who's like, hey, I'm going to stick around and I'm going to get my incentives and you guys are going to pay me and it's going to work. And it's worked.
He's 17 yards away from his first 1,000-yard season in 5 years.
Make it happen, Court. Make it happen.
76 receptions. He's already at a career high. 7 touchdowns, the second best total of his career other than last year when he had 10 touchdown catches. Also a career-high first downs. 53 times he's moved the chains this year. And a success rate that's the second highest of his career, 53.1%. So a lot of things going in the right direction for Courtland Sutton. And you and I talked about it when he had his – I can't call it a holdout because OTAs are voluntary, but when he stayed away and he wanted a new contract – he didn't deserve a new contract. He didn't deserve a raise. The needle they threaded of giving him some incentives to earn that raise, that was pretty fair, I thought, because the contract that he had, what he was getting paid, he wasn't overpaid, he wasn't underpaid. It was a right-sized contract. He had not earned more over the length of that deal, which started, of course, in 2022. Now, he will have earned the incentives, and it certainly will lead to some interesting conversations in the offseason because he has another year left on his deal. But at the same time, do you start working on a longer-term deal? Do you let him play out this deal? And the Broncos could cut him and have very minimal disruption to their salary cap because that's in play as well. So, there's a time for those discussions. That's going to be, sometime, hopefully not till February, but it's going to come up pretty soon.
Yeah, it's going to come up pretty soon, but making the playoffs for these two who have worked so hard to stick with the Broncos. They've seen a lot here with this team. So many different quarterbacks. I can't even guess the number of quarterbacks that Sutton's caught the ball from, but I'll just say as starters, it's got to be like, what, 8?
Okay, let's go through it, right?
All right.
Joe Flacco, Brandon Allen, Drew Lock.
Yep.
Brett Rippon.
Okay.
Did not play in the Kendall Hinton game because, of course, he had torn ACL. Teddy Bridgewater.
Okay.
Russell Wilson.
Jarrett
Stidham, Bo Nix. 8. That's quarterbacks. I believe isn't there an Emmanuel Sanders pass somewhere in there for him?
Yes, I believe those two did connect for a score. Yeah. It was either the other way. It was either Courtland throwing it or Emmanuel throwing it. Either way, both of them pretty good arms, right? For SMU wide receivers, they got some good arms out there.
Well, Courtland Sutton, for his career, he has a perfect passer rating,
There you go.
158.3. He's 4 for 4 completions in 2019, 2021, and a pair of completions this year for 84 yards and a touchdown, no interceptions. Every time he's attempted a pass, it's gone for a first down. And he's averaging a robust 21 yards per attempt for his career.
I like that.
So, yeah, and by the way, yes, the 2018 pass, it was from Sanders to Sutton because I'm looking at Court's numbers right now. He didn't throw a pass till 2019, by which point Emmanuel Sanders had been traded.
Yes. Because he asked to be traded. And again, back to the Sutton thing, like both Bolles and Sutton, this could have gone completely different for both gentlemen. It could have gone with the, hey, trade me. And we know Sutton had some interest. Baltimore, we know there were mid-round picks tossed out. So it's like Sutton sticking with them, Mace, but it's also the Broncos sticking with Sutton because they weren't blown away from the 49ers offer or the Ravens offer or whoever was offering for Courtland Sutton.
Interest in back-to-back off seasons in Courtland Sutton. And actually, I mean, you kind of look at how the situation goes. If the Broncos don't get off to a good start, is he the player this season? Is he the player you're talking about being on the market? Because I think, fortunately, we're free of this pattern now with the Broncos. But one of the patterns of the QB carousel world of suck era was a core player being dealt at the trade deadline, right? Demaryius Thomas, the late DT, 2018. Emmanuel Sanders, 2019. None in 2020 because COVID made midseason trades a little more difficult. Von Miller in 2021, Bradley Chubb 2022. Right? Could have been Justin Simmons and Jerry Jeudy in 2023 if not for the back-to-back wins over the Packers and the Chiefs. But here we are. Despite not getting the draft capital that they could have gotten for Jeudy and Simmons in 2023, the Broncos stand here at the precipice of the playoffs with a depleted Chiefs team. I mean, did you see their injury report today?
I saw the injury report and I saw the list. Can't remember who put it out there of like, these guys aren't going to play.
Yes.
And it's a robust list.
Yeah, because you have Isaiah Pacheco, Jawan Taylor, McCole Hardman, and Jalen Watson, who are ruled out, of course. But that list includes a couple of guys who are, McCole Hardman is working his way back from injury.
Jalen Watson just got activated, so they're waiting for the playoffs to bring him back.
Yeah, so they're in the 21-day window that we often talk about, the window that Tyler Bidet is in, and maybe keep your eye on. Maybe he might be coming up here because that window expires here in the next 5 days. So you got Jawan Taylor, Isaiah Pacheco on the 53 are already ruled out. Chris Jones, doubtful with an injury, a calf injury. Trent McDuffie, doubtful with a knee injury, the great cornerback for the Chiefs. And, of course, Patrick Mahomes, doubtful with an ankle injury. I would expect Mahomes to be in uniform as an emergency quarterback, but that's it. But then you have 6 players who are doubtful. They don't have injuries. And in fact, It literally is listed on the injury report, cease as NIR, not injury related, coaching in parentheses. Very reminiscent of Greg Popovich, as I was saying in the locker room today, back when he had Tim Duncan for the San Antonio Spurs, and sometimes Duncan would show up in the box score as DNP, old. NIR, coaching. That's Nick Bolton, Kareem Hunt, George Karlaftis, Travis Kelce, Justin Reed, and Drew Tranquil. So you start doing the math. Some of those doubtfuls are going to be active, right? You have the six players who are doubtful with no injuries. And then you have Mahomes, McDuffie, Jones doubtful with injuries. You're going to have players who are doubtful who are active but don't play. Like the DNP list for the Chiefs, players who are in uniform and don't actually play on Sunday, is going to include some of those names we're mentioning. So effectively, you'll have a couple of practice squad elevations, sure, but this might be a Chiefs team that is only playing about 40 guys.
Yeah. Yeah, you're going to get a lot of playing time.
Yeah, some dudes are going to be Iron Men coming out of this game. I actually wonder about which players they're going to elevate from their practice squad as well to kind of fill in. Just like I'm curious what the status is going to be for Tyler Bidet this weekend as well. By the way, Frank Crum for the Broncos ruled out, missed all 3 days of practice with an illness. So he won't go, but he's been inactive in recent weeks. So that doesn't really kind of affect what the Broncos are doing. I think sort of the interesting thing going into this game is with the clock ticking down on Tyler Bidet. Is there a roster move made on Saturday to get Bidet back on the 53?
And does it include Crum?
Maybe.
Yeah.
That would be the obvious thing to think of. You want to get Bidet back up is Crum to IR. Because another thing that's also in play, if you need an extra tackle, Cam Fleming, you've only used one elevation on him. Although I have to find out, do the elevations reset in the postseason? Either way, with Cam Fleming, you got two elevations there. And I think if the Broncos were looking for an extra tackle, just in case because of injuries, all respect to Frank Crum, but if they needed an extra tackle in there to go along with Alex Palczewski, I would imagine they'd probably go with the experience of Cam Fleming, who's been in some playoff games over the years, even has a couple of Super Bowl rings.
Yeah, put Crum on the Palcho plan, because the Palcho plan worked pretty good for Palcho because when we saw him, he's a damn good starter. So Crum, more time to develop. Maybe in a couple of years, we'll see the Palcho plan.
Yes. I expect Crum will be on the 53 next year, but clearly they value him. Just like clearly they value Blake Watson, who I expect probably won't see the ball again this season unless you have a wave of injuries at running back heading into the playoffs. But clearly is somebody, we got a glimpse of him against the Chargers, and is somebody that Sean Payton really appears to like.
Yep. And they like Donald Parham and they like A.T. Perry.
We got a show coming on A.T. Perry here.
Yes, we do.
When the offseason begins, because keep your eyes on number 87 long term. Put his name, put his name in your mental Rolodex. People don't have Rolodexes anymore, do they? Well, I guess we have Rolodexes. They're just our phones now.
They're called our phones.
Yes, nice. I'm using mine as a camera, so you held it up. Back to Bolles and Sutton real quick.
We got to get to the comments from Troutman and McGlinchey here too.
Yeah, that's where I wanted to go with this. Who do you want to hear from first? You want to hear from Trout? You want to hear from Mike?
Let's start with Trout because it's pretty healthy. It's a healthy, lengthy kind of commentary on his teammates. And when asked, I believe you asked the question, Mace. I mean, it's almost unprompted who he's talking about.
I'm not going to necessarily speak to the old culture. I wasn't really a part of it. Or even, obviously they were here. They've been here for a while, whatever it was in 17, 18, 19. But, I mean, they love it because everybody's bought into it. They bought into it, obviously, and them being leaders on this team. But, yeah, it's accelerated everything when your best players buy into the culture and you have no option. The younger guys have no option but to follow it. And they've done a great job of taking what Sean's kind of brought here and then really blasting it out to everybody in the locker room and just like, this is how we do things, and they hold people accountable. And I guess specifically Courtland, like number one receivers, you don't really get, I'd say generally on most teams, like legitimate leadership. They don't care if they're getting the ball, or like that's hard to find. And he's a true number one receiver in this league, and he never bitches about anything, never like give me the ball. He never does that stuff. And like as a player, that's a huge thing because you see it on all other teams across the league. So that could be like, you know, he's bonded to the culture, but it's also because that's just who he is as a person.
I love that.
Yeah.
I'm writing it down. I'm right because what he said, dude, accelerated everything when your best guys buy into the culture.
Yes.
Why are they ahead of schedule? Because Blanky Blank and Garett Bolles and Courtland Sutton bought into this culture and became Payton guys and leaders on this team, continued their leadership.
The reason why I asked Trout about them is because we've heard a lot, especially in recent weeks, of Adam talking about the culture that's been built around here. And even like he won't name names on the record, but noting guys that aren't here. And like noting that, you know, that we kind of cleared some of it out. Like he told us a couple of weeks back about how last year guys who'd been around, if the team got behind, they'd be like, well, here we go again, you know?
Yep.
And how that doesn't exist anymore. Sean Payton kind of alluded to that today when I followed up with him waxing poetic about how this was a team picture to savor. And I said, well, when did you know like that this team was unique, that this was a team picture worth savoring? And he went on a 3.5 minute response talking about the week in West Virginia bracketed by the Bucks and Jets games. But he said something in there where he noted, you know, last year we got into that hole and they were able to get back to 500, even briefly at one game above 500. But it's like, he's like, the team put so much effort into doing that. They had nothing left to kind of finish. And so that's why it was essential that instead of letting it get to 1-5, like it got last year, at 0-2, it stopped. He referenced the 2017 Saints team, which he likes to do. That young team with a veteran quarterback and Drew Brees, obviously, but that young team that had the great draft, the Alvin Kamara, Trey Hendrickson draft, and how they were able to put it behind them pretty quickly and have a good season and get to the playoffs. And that's sort of a difference. And the guys that are around are the ones that have bought in. The guys that aren't, by and large, I think you can kind of put 2 and 2 together. I mean, I think it's something kind of worth thinking about when you look at the composition of this Broncos team compared to the last Broncos team. Yes, they had some cap issues. I mean, I'll just give you a good example. You know, Lloyd Cushenberry was a guy that I think they would have liked to have kept around.
Sure.
But they had to make some decisions that were based on the constraints in which they found themselves. But others who were here and not here probably fall into that mix of not quite being the cultural fit that Sean Payton had. It was not to reference Chairman Mao, but it was a cultural revolution.
Well,
with the Broncos.
You had to change it, and you had to go with guys that you knew would listen to and respond. It's not just about listening.
Yeah.
It's about responding and how to motivate them the right way. Sean Payton clearly found those guys, and credit to Bolles and Sutton for buying in and then helping to lead the way, because then young guys go, well, Sutton's been here forever and he's been through a ton of stuff and he's buying in.
And Troutman talking about how Courtland never complains, right? That he had that game in New Orleans on Thursday night back in October. He doesn't get the ball, a big fat bagel. And he didn't complain.
Nope.
Didn't make a fuss. Was still completely bought in. It's why he's got a C on his jersey. And Troutman sort of also mentioning that, like, it's like he said, number one receivers, you don't really get legitimate leadership. I think that's his way of saying that number one receivers can sometimes be a little bit diva-esque. Like he's not saying it, but he's saying it basically. Like, those guys can be it's about, what I'm getting, my stats, what's in it for me. And Courtland Sutton being a number one receiver, being a we guy, not a me guy.
Mm. And Sutton doesn't have a Twitter handle that says can't guard court. Because my mind goes to, wait, who's Adam Troutman been around? Who's he talking about? Okay. Well, we know. And
a guy who put up some very good numbers in Cleveland this year. I think we can kind of put that together.
I was thinking of Michael Thomas.
Yeah.
Can't guard Mike. So either way,
yeah,
they're here. They're getting it done. And you love to see it. McGlinchey, though, talked about both Sutton and Bolles. You want to set that up? Or you want me to just play it?
Let's just play that. Let's just play what he had to say about the two of them and what it might mean to them to get in the playoffs for the first time.
Well, I think the reason they're still here is because, first and foremost, they're great football players, and great football players aren't allowed to leave buildings, right? And the two of them have been so instrumental in our success, not only this year but starting last year. Obviously, Courtland is one of the most impressive people I've been around on top of his game, but his ability to ignite a locker room, his personality is infectious. He never quits. He's never complaining, and I think the two of them are a huge reason why we're having the success that we're having. Obviously, individually, they're so talented, but they're two guys that bring our team together.
Never complaining. We got that twice.
Yeah, don't complain. Do their job. Trust the process. Okay, I had 0 today. Next game, it's gonna come my way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is. It's come a long way from Jerry Jeudy tweeting that he got his route running in.
Right.
Which he deleted, but screen captures are forever.
It's the internet, man. It's the internet. And Court, I don't think Court said really much of anything. Bo did say to him, though, like, hey, dude, if you have 0 catches at halftime, come talk to me.
Yeah.
So it was Bo kind of standing up for his guy more than it was Court saying, hey, I was open.
But it's also Bo kind of doing his job as a leader, kind of recognizing, oh, wait, he doesn't have any. Like, Bo being able to balance a lot of things. Like some of us, I'll admit I'm one of these people. I'm not a great multitasker. I don't necessarily have the greatest bandwidth for balancing things in the world. I couldn't be a quarterback, but Bo has that ability in the midst of the chaos of a game day. All that's thrown at you to at halftime say like, oh yeah, Court, we got to get you the ball. I haven't gotten you the ball yet. Have that sort of awareness. It's to me, that's a great sign for Bo Nix and what the Broncos have in him, that he can make a note of that. We have this comment here. Can you go back, put that comment back up there? We have finally changed the culture where we pay the players that are deserving. So guys want to do, think about this a few years ago. It was very much a thing in the Broncos locker room that the big contracts in the offseason were going to free agent imports rather than players being developed.
Yes.
Like you think back to guys who ended up still being solid elsewhere. Like I think of the offensive line, for example. The Broncos let Matt Paradis go, and he went to Carolina, and then he did well before he got injured again. Connor McGovern,
not happy with John Elway.
No. Connor McGovern, remember him? Pretty solid guy, versatile, could play 2 or 3 spots on the offensive line, and he's still kicking around the league. Broncos didn't re-sign him. I mean, they had a habit of, they wouldn't re-sign, a long snapper after a certain point, right?
It was almost a hallmark of Elway, a point of pride for him to be like, look what we got. Like, you had it. You just should have paid it, right? You should have paid what you had. And Elway almost wanted to spend. maybe it was the car dealer thing. You know what I mean? We've talked about that with John before of like, you're not getting a deal all the time, John.
That was the other thing. Like he wanted a discount. Like he wanted sometimes, and it does go back to his very successful background in the automotive industry.
Sure.
But sometimes what happens is you want to win that deal, right? It's not enough to make a fair deal. You got to win the deal. This started to change with George Payton coming in because George understood that it's about a deal that maybe each party feels like they gave up something, but each party feels pretty good about it. Whether you're talking about trades or you're talking about signings, right? Because in the whole thing of signing players in particular, it's, you want to do, you got to deal with these agents. There are only but so many player agents. So you're going to have to deal, you're going to have to deal with Drew Rosenhaus sometime, right? For just to name an example. You don't want to be actively kind of ticking them off. And there was some ticking off going on toward the last few years of the Elway era that you have a more conciliatory approach now and also for George Payton coming in. Remember, the first off season he was here, one of his first big moves was to re-sign Justin Simmons. Simmons had been tagged the previous year. And, they went forward with the tag and then they got him signed quickly. They also re-signed Shelby Harris that first off season. Of course, he was traded to Seattle the following year. But I think you look back at that first off season for George Payton, and it was the first indication, okay, this is going to be different. We're going to re-sign more guys. And I'll also give credit. John Elway did re-sign Garrett Bowles. That was actually his last re-signing. So maybe John Elway was starting to kind of get the memo there at the end, toward the end. But yeah, you go back to like 2017, 2018, 2019. It was always like, oh, let's go for the shiny object. Let's draft Bradley Chubb, even though we have Shaq Barrett. We've done shows on that. we don't need to revisit that one again. But it's like, you don't need to go shopping when you've got the item there in your closet, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's part of why you and I talk about, hey, these guys got to, get Audric Estime the ball more, because let's find out if he can be the guy before you go shopping, right? So anyway,
well, it's a large conversation, that's for sure.
It is, but what we see, I think another good example here is recently we did the show on Marvin Mims Jr. and you figured out what Marvin could do really well. And now we're sitting here talking about maybe you're looking at wide receiver, but not to the degree that you were looking at it before. You actually may have some answers here with this team going forward. You need someone dynamic. You may have that guy, the vertical stretch guy. You may have that guy, Marvin Mims Jr. By the way, I thought it was really interesting. I wrote a story on Marvin Mims Jr. kind of emerging as this vertical threat. Now he changed the offense. And I noticed that it was liked on Twitter/X by Marvin Mims Sr.
Senior.
Yes.
He's out there.
Yes.
And
so this is something
changes,
but it's also something we think about. The families, the players, like they're watching, they're reading.
I've had some mothers call me out for my draft rankings on players, email me things like, it's interesting. Never had Connor Cook's folks go after me. I have friends that did. That like legit phone calls from Connor Cook's parents. So we get it sometimes. And the nice thing is, like, we talk about what we're going to do in the offseason, Mace. How many mocks have we seen that were like Isaiah Bond in the first round? Like, you got Marvin Mims. That changed that. You don't need a speedy Texas receiver. You got a speedy Oklahoma receiver. So if Estime, like, I don't know, is that Devin Neal in the third round? Or is it Ashton Genty in the first round? And moving up to get him. Like, we don't know because we don't know about Estime, but we know about Marvin, so we can change all those mocks that had insert wide receiver X here for the Broncos in the first round, like Isaiah Bond.
It's why I think it, at least right now, it seems to be crystallizing around tight end.
We'll see.
Because I think we've gotten, we're pretty sure of what's in that room. Like, I think Adam Troutman may be around another few years, but not as
I think
tight
he may be a
end
coach.
Yeah, but not as tight end 1, maybe tight end 2, blocking tight end. The guy who's helping Tyler Warren along, perhaps.
Yes.
I'm gonna try to will that into existence.
Everybody wants
Everyone loves Warren right now, but we were talking about him months ago. Now it's like I feel like everyone's joined the party after that game against Boise.
Yeah, everyone's jumping on. I would just say this: still want that running back. It's going to be a great debate for this offseason because you're going to have to move up for Warren.
Yeah, you are. But maybe like what, pick 13, pick 14? Might not cost you that much.
Maybe.
Janty might cost you more to move up. He might be
top 10. He
might have cemented himself right there on the around top 5. I mean, you and I talked about this earlier. The performance he had against Penn State in the Fiesta Bowl, the yardage total isn't impressive, but how he's getting those yards, how he's dealing with stacked boxes and still finding creases, carrying guys, like that was a grown man running the ball. That was somebody you can step in and is going to be an immediate standout in the NFL, barring injury.
1,700 of his yards were after contact.
I mean, that's gracious.
1,700 yards after contact.
If you could tell me he would have the long-term endurance of Derrick Henry, I might be like, okay, sign me up right now for him, even if it means moving up. But that's the thing you don't know. It's less about Janty and more about the natural attrition at running back.
It's more about his 700 carries.
Yeah,
he's Ricky Williams.
Well,
so here's what you're going to get. You're going to get
Montee Ball
years.
too. Montee Ball too. Remember, Broncos drafted him. Of course, there were other issues, but one of the things for Montee Ball was an incredibly high touch count at Wisconsin.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
It's going to be a fun few months talking about these guys. It's great to not talk about quarterback either. Like
we're going to talk backup quarterback though.
Ooh, yes.
And I'm still taking a late round quarterback every single year. Every year.
Oh, I'm with you.
7th rounder.
It's the Ron Wolf philosophy. Always be evaluating quarterbacks. Always.
Throwing darts, man. That's all you're doing. All right, Mace, let's wrap this thing up. We will have a Saturday show for everyone, doing a pregame show where we're going to jump into the best game plan for the Broncos against the Chiefs. That's Saturday. So make sure to check that out. But Mace, how can folks help us out on YouTube?
Like,
comment,
share,
subscribe,
hit that notification bell.
Are we okay? So that you
never miss a vid.
That's right. He's Andrew Mason. You follow him on all the socials at Mace Denver. I'm at Cecil Lammey saying OBT's BFD. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned and stay frosty.